Hi, welcome to Orchid Box. Today I'm just doing I'm gonna try to do a live stream of a small seascape painting. I haven't done a live stream on this channel before, and I thought I would give it a try. Okay, so I have this, I'm using this book. It's a watercolor field journal. It's a mini book, and I think I don't know, it's 4 by, I'm not sure how big this is. It's 5.5 by 3.75. Okay, I thought that would give some perspective on what I'm doing here. But anyway, this is the first one I did in this book, and I thought I'll try to continue. I'm not sure how strong the paper is, so I'm going to maybe do it on this side. Okay. The paint I'm using is my palette that I created this palette from the Mijello Mission Gold, and yeah, I've had it for a few years. So anyways, let's see where we can get. This is a scene that I'm gonna be creating. It's a view that I took off the coast of Jamaica in Kingston. Okay, so let's try. I'm wetting my brush, and I'm using this size to start with. Okay, let's see. All right, this is a pretty gray looking scene, so it's not that it was gray, but it was because I remember being there that day. It was just very bright, like a very white light. So let's take this one. I think it's like this one might be cobalt. It's Mijello's cobalt blue. Okay, so we just mix up a little bit, and all right, so let's try to put a horizon line in. Okay, now the ratio is different because my picture is square, as you can see, but I have a rectangular paper, so it's kind of just like mentally adjusting as you go. I like to like dot the lines in, so it's very loose. Okay, and so far we have some kind of general shape. We have a little island on the right, so I'm gonna grab just a little bit of like a green, but make it very light so that you know you can always like paint over. Okay, all right, so that is like the general basis. Now here is where you can have like a lot of fun with that part. All right, so let me grab a different brush. I have maybe this one will be good. All right, so the important thing here is like the color. You want like that nice undertone, and so this cobalt seemed to work, but it needs like a little bit of green down. Okay, so I want to mix up enough of that. And then I'm gonna add just a touch of like I wanted like a kind of slightly purpley tone. If you're looking at the screen, there's like an underlay of that light on the sea is kind of very like almost like a lavender or like a baby blue. So let's go in with that. I wonder how visible this is. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna shift my light. Hopefully you guys will see a little bit more. I think I can hold this like a little bit closer. Right, so I kind of do an all over tone. And then once that's kind of dry, I can go in with stronger shapes to create this kind of sea dappled effect. All right, so while that is drying, I feel like watercolor is a kind of juggling act sometimes. I'm gonna do something with the sky. No, there are clouds. So, and it's actually a very similar color to the sea, but I think it's a little bit more purple. There's a little bit more of like a warm base. Okay, so now I'm just gonna like try to map out what I'm seeing with the blue patches. Okay. All right, and the thing I like about watercolor is that you can actually remove some of it as you go along. This might come off as very light at this point, but I think the good thing is like being able to build color. Okay, I need a napkin to dab my brush. All right, there we go. All right, so let us maybe work a little bit on this bush at the side. All right, so this area is the landmass of where we were painting. All right, so green is our base, of course, but it's quite a dark green, and you can always darken it as you go. But I'm gonna just grab a little bit of a color that brings that tone down. That's purple, right? Purple's giving that color. Alright, so now I might go in with a little bit of navy blue. Alright, so we have quite a dark green, but it's for me it's still a little bit vivid, so it needs like a yellowy tone, which this olive is. And I'm gonna add a little bit of like a brown. Okay, just to like bring it down. Okay, there we go. I kind of like this as a base for our island mass. Okay, and right now everything is wet, so like be careful. Or I should tell myself to be careful actually. that this is when things will bleed. All right, so let's go up with that. All right, so we have like early stage vegetation on the side, and now I'm gonna try to put in this mountain area here, which it comes off as a kind of I don't know, like a hazy pale blue. So I'm gonna take, this is cobalt teal, and a little bit of that lavendery color that we mixed earlier. So it kind of brings it down, and now I can add that in. And one of the really nice things about watercolor is that you can kind of glaze over to change color at the end or as you're working. Okay. Alright, so I feel like the sea area might be a little bit dry now. So now I'm gonna go in with like a kind of deeper blue. This is I think this is called Jello blue, maybe. All right, and I'm gonna grab a little bit of a purpley tone. Okay. And I can test here. Okay, that seems a little bit too purpley, so I am actually gonna gray that down a little bit with a brown. Okay, all right, so we're getting like the trace of a greenish blue. That's what I really like about like Mijello. The color mixing is so interesting. All right, so now I'm gonna try to create some shapes in what would be our base layer. All right, let's grab some more of that blue. It's really like the reflections of like the highs and lows of the water. And like once this is dry, you can also do another layer as well. All right, more blue. More blue, but on this side, on the left side, I think it is more more gray. So I just added, I think that color is like a burnt sienna type of color, and then a touch of like purple. Okay, yes, that's like the grayish type of blue that I'm looking for. And okay, I might need more of that. I love looking at the reflections that you can see. Like you can see like there's some lines. We could try that. We could just try like a line here. Okay. And there are some shapes over here. And yeah, as it starts to merge into, I can bring that color over here so that like everything is beginning to integrate. All right. Now there's another like tone that's I think in the middle of the seascape area. Well, in the middle of the water. And it is like a more aqua bluey type of color. Okay. I just really love this like cobalt turquoise color. It's really pretty. All right, and so now in the middle area I'm gonna put also some shapes here. All right, and now to integrate you can mix some of that color together. All right, so I think I have enough now for the C part. That needs to dry, and then I can always go back over it with more color, because I think what's needed up here is like a more gray blue, but this actually needs to dry. Okay, maybe there's a touch more in like a deeper area here. Okay, there's some deepening that I can do. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so we start to deepen some of these like shapes, but it's really just like observing your source photo if you're on site, because a lot of these I've done paintings where I've been on site and it comes out differently because of course the water is moving. And okay, this needs a little bit of like a more warm undertone. So you can see what I meant by like layering things. Okay, this needed to be deepened. Okay, let's get rid of that bookmark. It's a little bit in our way. All right, and I think I could be close to what we call overworking if I keep going too much. So I'm gonna let that dry, and then I'm gonna turn some attention now back to the sky, the horizon, the upper part of the horizon line. So in here, and so I think I need like a smaller brush. Okay, I think this is a size 8. All right, and there is like a little land mass line. And it does have a kind of like, okay, too much. The thing with Mijello, if any of you have used this brand before, it's very like intense. The colors are super intense. If you are in the market for, and I have no affiliation, I promise. I've just used it for years, and I noticed that when I use it, my paintings turn out to be very liquidy, which is, you know, like what you want watercolor to look like. It holds the like shape of water on the brush really well. All right, so I put in like a little bit of a suggestion of a landmass here. All right, and if you're looking at the horizon line up there, it still has a like a gray, there's like a gray line. So I'm gonna like just carry this across in dashes. And then up here, there is a very dark definition of this landmass. So I'm gonna just like put that under. And it's really like the reflection of the island. Okay, now for the green, and that green is like a very intense, well, it's not intense, but it came out like it's a very deep, I would say it has a warm undertone, which is what we put in. And then like it gets deeper, but the thing with watercolor is that you can lighten some of those things that you're seeing in a photo, because you know in real life it would have appeared to your eyes a little bit more vibrant, right? The photo tends to kill color. All right, so now if you wanted like that kind of bleeding effect of your colors, you could go in with that deeper tone, and that's, I think that's the burnt sienna, and it looks like the olive green. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. I love that when that happens. And we can go up some more. All right, I think we could leave that there for now. Although it is tempting, it's tempting to like go back in with a deeper color here so that it can just dry like that. Okay. All right, so that needs to dry. I'm gonna just pin it with I'm gonna get a pin here so that my color doesn't bleed all over the page. All right. So let's just pin this to, right, okay, that's better. All right, so now we have kind of a very dramatic sky here. And I think I want to do some more work on that. All right, so we need to deepen that sky is what I think. This could be ultramarine blue. And I think one of the things that brings a painting together is when you mix some of the colors that are already in the painting, right? So this was a blue I used in the sea. In nature, that blue would be reflected back in the water. So now I'm gonna go over with there's a kind of streakiness to the clouds. I remember doing like geography, and it's not cumulonimbus. I know cumulonimbus is like the big puffy type of cloud. This is more like stratus, maybe. All right. So that layering is kind of like starting to build like what I would call like a visual effect. Now, some of these you might want to like blend some of that. So you just go in with like a wet brush. It's like blending out the edges. All right, so now is a point at which I'm gonna like look at my painting instead of keep painting. I'm gonna look at my picture and see what else is needed as the paint dries. All right, so I think that this area could be darkened, like that landmass could be darkened. I think that this could be a little bit darker, the vegetation, and I do think that this needs like a wash of like a grade blue to start to bring it together. All right, so while that is going, I always think like a watercolor painting is just about like management of areas. So more purples with our blue, and we said I wanted it to be deeper. Okay, good. So now it's like it's about providing that like line, so that like emphasizes the horizon line. Okay, and then okay, there's the shape of the key here. It's a kind of awkward thing to do to okay, but we're gonna work it out here. And I think that the mountains could be a little bit, yeah, more defined. Okay, all right, so we were talking about that wash here. All right, let's do that. I want to just bring it up from the bottom of the painting to maybe midway. All right, so let's mix that. I'm gonna start with like a cobalt, turquoise. We want enough so that it will cover the page without also losing pigmentation. Now that is very vivid, and sometimes you can stretch the truth in a painting, so but let's still deepen it. Let's make it a little bit more deep, a little more grade down. All right, I'm gonna take my chances with this. Okay, yeah, I think that purple did the trick. Yeah, okay, that's nice. All right. Now here's the thing, you always run the risk, and that's like one of the things with watercolor. Have I like ruined my painting? That's always gonna like hover. Right, so what's clear to me is that I'm gonna need to go back after this is dry to re-enhance some of these shapes, but that's okay. The virtue of using good paper, good paint, and good brushes is that you can do that. And let's deepen this green. Okay, so I wanted to deepen the green here. And like the vegetation has this kind of dotty, like look. And it even appears kind of like blue at some parts. If you like look at the image here. All right, not too much detail because this is something that we've seen from afar. Okay, I think that that is okay right there. And now I'm just gonna like wait a little bit on my this area to dry. But while that's happening, I can actually mix my paint. Okay, I'm gonna use this big brush because I want those shapes that I go in with to kind of be like bold, and I don't want to get too fussy with it. Now on this side, I think that deep color needs to be stronger. Okay, let's mix it over here. You don't want to like get your paint too muddy, and you want to have that color again to work with. I don't know what that purple is. I have to check once the lid is up, but it's a very beautiful like muted type of purple that gives like this. It's really nice for like seascapes. And then there's like reinforcing some of those lines. I think if I continue working after this, I run the risk now of overworking. And so now whatever I do now has to be like really deliberate. Okay, I want to start to like lighten that, whatever it is I'm putting there, so that it doesn't compete with that and all the work that we put in beneath. Realize that my sketchbook is off camera. Okay. No, there's a color that's at the top of the, I haven't, I think this is too light up here, so let's just deal with that. Yeah, okay, like just tone that down a little bit. And this cobalt, there's an area here that's nice. Okay, there's one area I haven't dealt with yet, which is the beach of the landmass. So all right, let's look at that while this is drying. Actually, I'm looking at this like through the camera now, and I'm seeing that like there's an area of patterns right here of the water that I could put in. Let's make that a little bit bolder. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. Now let's try to do our beach area right up here. All right, so that's a kind of like yellowy, but kind of like warm yellow. So it's not, okay. This is when you start to run out of like palette space. Okay, that's a yellow, but that's not the color. It needs like a warm color, and this, you know, this is like a nice orange. It's a Magello color, but it's such a nice like glazing color. No, that could seem like too bright, right, on the palette. Let's test it here. Okay. I think that would be okay. Let's just make sure that we have like some space. Okay, this is what you don't want. But you can like just dab it up. Like what I'm trying to do is get the intensity of the color without it kind of like going over the green and the blue, because then it's gonna create a green. Okay. Let's stretch that out some more. Okay, this is what happens when you put color on something that's wet. All right, but we can dab it up. All right, so apart from like maybe once this is dry, like a line that I would put, not a line, you know, not like a black line, but like a gray line. There's like a separation between the shore and the beach that I could put, but it's not gonna hold that line right now because it's wet. So in the meantime, what I can do is like try to find that color that I want to put there. I know it's like an aqua color, like a patch of aqua. And maybe a little of a like a ultramarine. All right, I've mixed it kind of bright. feel like it's still at that point where if I put it, it's gonna like diffuse into the beach area. So let me just leave that for a minute, and let's look at the painting. Okay, so one of the things that I love about watercolor is that you can get an impression, right? Clearly this is not this, but it's your impression of what you're seeing, and I love seeing the marks as well. So there's another way I could go about this painting, which is it could really be in box, right? You could do it as like this deeper gray blue, and then this like paler area, and then this area as well. That is a possibility as well. All right, so now I think we can go in. Right, it's dried enough. Okay, good. All right. I'm not gonna leave that like that because that's so obviously like a line. But let's like bring that down into these areas. And then there is like a lavendery color that's coming off of the side here. That I can also use. I'm just looking to see like where else this lavender color wants to be. Alright, so this is the painting that came out of today's live stream session, and yeah, this was, the image is from off the coast of Kingston Harbor. More specifically, it's Lime Cay, and today that is what we have. I'm gonna leave this to dry because I think there's not a whole lot more work that I can do on this right now. So I'm gonna leave it as is for now. So let's see, if you want to see more of these seascape paintings, live streams, please give a thumbs up, and of course subscribe. Take care until the next time.